What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Guardians of the Galaxy video, and today let's go over the biggest tips and tricks that you definitely need to know. I played the game for over 30 hours and I definitely wish that I knew some of these earlier, especially when it came to combat, to exploration, to making things easier, and more important, to make them a lot more fun. As always, a thumbs up on the video would be super awesome, and let's jump right in. By the way, I'm also doing another giveaway for a free copy of Guardians of the Galaxy on any platform the winner chooses. The only thing you have to do is to follow the link down below to the giveaway, and of course be a subscriber to the channel, and I will announce the winners right here in a future video. With that out of the way, let's begin with the first tip, and that is to always be using your visors. These will highlight points of interest and other objects that can be interacted with or collected. And the general rule is that if an object is yellow, it is most likely very important. As a matter of fact, exploration in Guardians of the Galaxy is very rewarding. That is going to be the main way to find components that you further use to upgrade your gear and get perks, but even more so, it is the main way you acquire many of the outfits you can find in the game. There's over 40 of these in total, and pretty much almost every level and chapter out there will hold at least a few of these. You can also further press R2 on the controller to bring up the scan item. That's going to give you a lot more information, like for example revealing the possibility of another teammate to interact with that object to open up a path ahead. Moving on to number 2, let's talk a bit about combat and why team combos are extremely important to instantly increase your damage by up to several times. So in Guardians of the Galaxy, there's something called a damage multiplier, and essentially when using a skill against an enemy, either your own or some of the other Guardians, this will add a damage multiplier which is further displayed over the enemy's heads. Essentially, the more skills you use, the higher the multiplier, which means obviously the higher the damage you're going to deal against them. So this is the way you're supposed to play this game. You're supposed to spam attacks in combat to issue commands for the other Guardians, and once you increase that multiplier to like times 3, times 4, or times 5, then you can unleash your own attacks and deal maximum damage. If you're just sitting there spamming your blasters, which is something that I've seen a lot of the big outlets doing, that is very inefficient and not the proper way to play this. Otherwise, you will just complain about bullet sponginess. The way to play it is through these team combos, and there's also a final advantage that you get at the end of that combat, and that is the bonus XP that you get for all of the cool combos that you pulled off, which means faster leveling, faster skill points that you can further invest into your own team to unlock more skills to fare better in combat later on in the game. Now, still on the subject of combat, there's another cool trick to further increase your damage for a little bit, and that is through the Stagger. Now, Stagger bar is the white bar beneath the enemy's HP bar. You're pretty much familiar with this concept, but staggering an enemy is another way to further multiply your damage against them and immobilize them momentarily. Some abilities are better than others at providing stagger, and you can see that right next to the abilities. Like for example, Drax's Destroy ability is one very early and efficient way of staggering most of the enemies, including the elite ones. Another really great way of doing so is through your own elemental attacks, but unfortunately these are unlocked at specific moments in the story, and the earliest one is gonna be your frost bullet. But what you want to do is to pay close attention to the enemy weakness that is displayed next to their HP bar, because if you match your elementals with their weakness, you can not just disable their shields, which you will find quite a lot as you progress more into the game, but also fully stagger them way faster. And this is what you will want to do to combine for maximum damage. You will want to stagger them, then unleash the combos, and then just unleash your own damage to kind of like create this huge damage multiplier that will instantly melt almost any enemy team. But moving on to number 4, at the same time also pay attention to the button prompts that will also likely appear during these combat moments. Especially against the elite ones, you can completely disable parts of their powers with a well-placed shot at the right time. That's why I recommend to pay close attention to the triangle pop-ups and always press them, because usually this disables anything from from the shields that some of the early enemies might have, to the flora creatures having their tails cut off, or some of the bigger monsters and robots having their limbs cut off to reduce their damage and attacks. And even like the jetpack enemies can have their jetpacks disabled so that they don't become that annoying and like constantly avoid your attacks. Team takedowns is the final prompt. This is the combination between triangle and circle on the controller. If you're on the keyboard and mouse, there should be an equivalent to that. And when an enemy is under 40% HP and if it is staggered or immobilized, you can perform a team takedown which instantly deletes them. By the way, another quick tip I have here to speed up that animation and make it pretty much instant is to previously freeze that enemy before performing the animation, as that will replace it with a shatter that, yeah, just makes things a lot more faster. Moving on to number 5, since we're on the subject of convenience, go into your control scheme and change your input modes from hold to press. This is going to take out a lot of stress on your fingers, since now you don't have to hold the Guardian menu button anymore, but you just have to press it once and that menu will stay up for as long as you, well, don't press it again. So it's gonna make it super easy for you to chain combos between one another without having to use so many fingers and kind of relax a little bit when playing. Moving on to number 6, there's a really easy way to constantly win Huddles. Now the Huddle is your ultimate ability move, the one that you use to gather up all of your teammates, even resurrect them in combat, and provide some very useful buffs, including completely reducing the cooldown of all of the abilities. Now there's a couple of choices that you always have to make. If you pick the wrong answer, only Quill will get that buff, but if you pick the correct one, everybody in the team gets that. So you will probably want to strive to always get the correct answer. So to do that, pay close attention to the words that are flashed behind the Guardians during this scene, as this will give you clues to what the right option is. So for example, if you see a certain word that is flashed behind them, usually it will be displayed in the option that is correct beneath that. If it's not, just pay attention to the context. Like for example, if everybody in your team is like super excited and they enjoy taking down enemies, you will want to focus them and tell them to focus so they don't lose track of the enemies. Or otherwise, if they are scared of the enemies, you just want to boost their morale and tell them that as long as you're playing as a team, you will always succeed. But yeah, after I watched those words in the back and paid attention to the choices, I constantly won all of these huddles 100% of the time. Moving on to number 7, environmental hazards are a really awesome quick way to provide high damage at no cost whatsoever and no cooldown. Pretty much, if you open up your eyes during combat, you will see that there's many props and objects that you can interact with and have your team members use in combat. For example, Gamora can cut down suspended weights on enemies' heads, Drax is amazing at throwing explosive barrels or heavy objects, Rocket is crazy good at setting up proximity mines, and Groot is really great at spiking attacks from beneath, which is a really efficient way of taking down multiple enemies at the same time. So just open up your eyes in combat, because that's gonna make things a lot easier for you at no additional cost. Moving on to number 8, yeah, we are kind of done with combat, but let's go back at exploration and the overall game. Your choices really matter in Guardians of the Galaxy, even though you might not realize that. Your interactions, especially with some of the side characters, will matter a lot, because you might or might not get their help later on in the game. Now some of these choices are a bit more immediate than others, like for example, not making contact with a certain group in chapter 5 can let you completely pass unnoticed and avoid a fight while still retaining an element of surprise in your next encounter. On the other hand, if you befriend Nikki during chapter 2 and get her to give her passkey, this will make some of the later chapters, including chapter 7, a lot easier, since you're gonna have access to a lot more areas. I'm definitely planning on a video that will show all of these moments, but in the meantime, just pay close attention to these interactions. They are definitely worth it, even though the outcome and the end of the story doesn't change. During these moments, yes, things can change quite a lot on the battlefield, and you can get a ton of help if you make the proper dialogue choices. But moving on to number 9, yeah, if you didn't plan these correctly, or if you already picked choices that might not have seemed correct to you, then don't worry. The game features a new game plus and also a chapter select once you finish the game. So you can go ahead and start a new game plus, which also gives you a number of other cool benefits. This includes continuing the play with your abilities that you already unlocked, the perks and the outfits, but the elementals will reset since they are tied to the main story. At the same time, you can also unlock the bonus deluxe items even without pre-ordering the game or buying the digital edition. And of course, that chapter select will give you the possibility to go back at these options, select the proper ones, and even unlock new achievements, which is something that you will probably want to do once you finish the entire game and still have some stuff left on the side. And that is kinda it with the biggest tips and tricks you need to know in Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. Of course, there's many more that we could have covered, but as always, leave anything that I completely missed out in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next one.